All right, so in my last video, or a previous video, I was showing how I made these parts for a Poacher Mercedes build. And I was showing how I did it with just drill press and bandsaw and hacksaw and files. And some of you may have thought that I was complaining that I didn't have a milling machine. Well, that was only because I was actually complaining that I don't have a milling machine. And one of you kind commenters uh, politely pointed out that I do have a milling machine. It's in the form of my Logan lathe right over there that I did another video on. And all I need to do is put the part on a Z-axis so I could raise the part up and down, put the cutter in the lathe. Now, I've known about this for years. In fact, several years ago, when I first got my little Craftsman 6-inch lathe, I found a bunch of parts at a thrift shop that I thought I could use to actually make one of those milling attachments. And I've also seen them on eBay, but usually on eBay, uh, people are really proud of this stuff. They wanted like a lot of money for it. Um, Now, so those parts that I bought probably 15 years ago sat in a box in the back of one of my bins. And so I finally decided, after I read that comment, I'm thinking, well, yeah, I've got parts and I've had plans on making one. So I pulled those parts out to see if I could actually throw it together and actually make it work. So the first piece, I have no idea what it is. It's an aluminum angle, and there's actually a label on it that says Almond Specimen Gauge. Um, I don't know what kind of specimens you're gauging or how you gauge a specimen, but if anybody has any clue what this is, let me know. I'd be kind of curious. But this was just in a random pile of stuff, and it was a nice chunky piece of aluminum, and I thought it could be useful. So what I did with this, now there were magnets in the bottom. I removed the magnets and I turned down a piece of aluminum spacer to put in there. And then I drilled 2 holes. So that hole will match the part on the lathe as well as those holes. Counterbored in for the bolts. And there were some existing holes that I couldn't use. But counterbored in for some bolts. And then I drilled 6 holes for some screws. And then the other parts I got, I'm assuming was a cross slide off of a lathe. There were these two. Now, these two used to be one piece. And again, when I did this, it was well over 15 years ago, probably 18 years ago, give or take. Apparently, whatever these two parts were, I'm assuming it was much longer, and there was something in the middle that I didn't need. So I cut that middle piece out, and who knows what happened to that? I don't know. So I saved those 2 pieces with the end cap and the thread and the knob. I don't even know if that knob was from it. It could have been. I don't remember. And then another piece of a lathe component that I cut up, and there was something on top here because it was very poorly just angle grinded off. You could see that edge is all wavy, so is that edge. So there was something here. Maybe it was a tool holder, maybe another cross slide piece component. I have no clue. But that was angle grinded off. Basically, just a couple of pieces from some lathe cross slides that I just butchered and cut up. Saved the parts that I thought would be useful, threw them in a box, and now 18 years later, here I am trying to make something out of it. So what I did was these 2 pieces, I drilled and tapped for these bolts. Those bolts are kind of hard to see because they're, black, but there they are. So I drilled and tapped them. They're just cast iron. They drilled and tapped rather easily, actually, easier than I thought they would. And then this piece, I put this piece on the 4-jaw chuck in the lathe and faced that off nice and flat and smooth. And then I drilled and tapped holes to where I could bolt on a 1, 2, 3 block. Now I've got plenty of room to drill and tap more holes, but I'm going to wait and see what I need. Right now, this is good. I can attach this in a couple of different ways as needed. And also to help for parts hold down, I made a couple of these. These are just, not that, a couple of these. These are just steel, pretty thick, 3/8 maybe? I don't know. Never even measured it. Just a thick, chunky piece of steel that I found. Drilled a hole in the middle that is big enough for a through bolt here that will thread into the threaded part of the 1, 2, 3 block. Not that bolt, it's too small. And then a threaded hole here. So now I could take this bolt, I could thread it in. And so I can use that to clamp down parts either on the 1, 2, 3 block or directly on here. So these were just roughly cut and drilled, nothing critical. I barely even measured anything. I'm also looking out, keeping an eye out on eBay for like about a, I don't know, about a 3-inch machinist vise I can clamp onto here. And I also have a Harbor Freight 4-inch rotary table that I could attach onto here, possibly. That's a possibility. And I don't know if I'll ever do this or not, but this came with my CNC router that I got a little while ago. I mean, I could, well, not that way, but I could mount that to it, maybe, possibly. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of possibilities here. I also have some of these that I got at Lowe's or Home Depot like a really, really long time ago because I thought they looked useful and I've never used them yet. But I could just drill a hole here, bolt those right to here, use those to hold parts. I mean, that would work. So there's lots of options for mounting stuff to here. Now, as far as the gib, I cut it short, and when I drilled and tapped the holes for this, I did that with the gib installed and this installed, and that way everything would be held nice and tight. Now, it works. It's a little bit tight when I'm raising it towards the top. It gets really tight. Right now, the gib screws are just there. They're not even pressing the gib up against it because even without these, this thing is really tight, has zero slack in it. So what I might do is take the gib out, shave maybe, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter off of it, and that way I can actually adjust it and get some nice movement in here. It does move all the way. It's just a lot tighter than I would like for it to be. So anyways, how about we mount this to the lathe? I will mount this piece of aluminum on it somehow and see if we can just face it smooth, just see if it works. Let's just mount. I haven't even tried it yet. So let's mount this to the lathe. I'll just clamp something to it and we'll just see how it works. All right, so as you can see, I clamped a scrap piece of aluminum here using those 2 blocks, 1, 2, 3 block, and some bolts. Not the most elegant way, I guess, but it'll work. So anyways, oh, and earlier when I said that these are real expensive on eBay, I did recently look, and there are a few that actually aren't that expensive. They're about $100. I can't remember exactly how much, but about $100, give or take a little bit. And at first glance, they look pretty nice, and I came this close to buying one, but the bottom did not look like it would have mounted to my lathe without modification, and I didn't know if I should, pay $100 or something and then try to modify it and risk it not being able to work with my lathe. But the movable part here was a bunch of T-sluts, which would have made it a lot easier to hold parts down, I would think. But also on closer look, they looked really Harbor Freight-ish, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on those. They kind of look good, but they kind of don't. If any of you know anything about them, I'll put a picture here. But if any of you know anything about them, let me know. Let me know if they're any good or not. Let me know if they're junk. If they are decent, and if I can find one, because they do have a few different styles as far as mounting. So if any of you can tell me that they're any good or not, I'd probably pay $100 for one and then try to fit it to my lathe if I knew for sure that would work. And also some of the others that definitely would fit my lathe, those are the ones that are about $400 or $500. And I know you're thinking, $500 for a milling machine really isn't that bad, and I fully agree. If somebody offered me a Bridgeport knee mill for $500, I wouldn't hesitate. I would even give them my drill press for. I'd throw my drill press in with it, which, by the way, is the only way I could fit an actual milling machine in my shop, is if I swapped it out with my drill press, because there's no other place to put a thing like that. But even if I paid $500 for an actual nice mill attachment, I still would only have a lathe with a mill attachment. And it would work in most cases, but you still wouldn't have the full functionality of an actual mill. Anytime you combine two machines, you're going to have limitations. And, even if I did have a really nice mill attachment on the lathe, it's still going to have limitations that will prevent me from doing what an actual milling machine would do. Some of you may fully disagree with that. I'm just going off of my own assumptions from what I've heard and seen. I have never used, of course, I'm saying this and I've never even used one of these yet, but we're about to, so let's find out. I can only imagine, though, that on a full milling machine, you're going to have much more travel. You're going to have a better time holding parts to the bed. It's just going to be better in general. But this is definitely better than nothing, so let's put it on the lathe and see how it works. Okay, so first thing to do is to take the cross slide off with the tool holder here. I've already taken the nuts off that go here, so this will just lift off. I can set that out of the way there. Also notice I just got a ER32 collet chuck with an MT3 taper, and it does have an M12 thread in the back for a drawbar. I don't have a drawbar yet. That was one of my goals for today, was to go get a piece of threaded rod and make a drawbar. Right now I'm only hoping that doesn't come out. It shouldn't. I smacked it in there pretty good. But as you can see here, this is what I got to work with to put the mill attachment on. And my first thought was maybe to just attach it to where the tool holder, there it goes, but I don't want that much stress on that. And the more stuff you can take out of the system, the less chatter you're going to have. At least that's what I'm assuming. So my mill attachment will just set right on there. The two nuts will go on. Let me get that put on, and then we'll get back to you. Okay. Sorry about the weird angle and the bad lighting. I do have a lamp, but the mill attachment is kind of blocking that lamp. Trying to get that. We'll just try that. We'll see how that works. So, as I said, I can move it this way. I'm going to come in. Like, why not? Why not full depth there? Now, one thing I did realize I don't like, the wheel here. The threads are right-hand threads, so it's backwards from what I would expect. Like, if I want this to go down, I got to turn this counterclockwise instead of clockwise. If I want it to come up, I got to turn clockwise instead of counter. So it's a little bit backwards. Let's try it, see what happens. Headphone users, I don't think my lathe is that loud, but just letting you know, lathe is coming on. And I'm going to start back here. I want to do a conventional mill. Actually, then that would be this way. So we'll start here. Just going to touch. go a little deeper. Now I have no idea where I got that milling, the end mill. I've had that end mill for years. It was probably in a box of junk I got from something else. So I have no idea how sharp it is, but it looks like it's doing fine. And that lighting is horrible. I'm just looking at the camera. I wonder if it'd be better without the light. Is that better? Like, you can answer me. Surface finish looks pretty decent, I think. I don't know yet, really. Just from looking at it in the dark. Yeah, it's not great. Surface finish isn't perfect, but better than I thought, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, the surface finish isn't too bad. I mean, better than grinding and filing. Let me try something else. I'm going to put a step in this. We'll just put a step in it. There is a little bit of movement and chatter, but really not that much. I guess I should have backed it all the way out before I went back. I want to bring it up a little bit. Take quite a bit of a deeper cut. I still don't know, like, depth of cut. I have not mic'd yet to see how many turns of the wheel. Like, what I need to do is, like, turn the wheel and measure a step, so I'll have an idea of depth of cut. Either that or put some calipers on it or something, or a dial indicator. That would be good. Just put a dial indicator on it. Would work pretty well, I think. But I can feel and see there is some slack, or there is some flex in it. Yeah, there's a lot of flex in there. And it might be because of the main base is aluminum. I have seen some steel or cast iron 90-degree angle blocks on eBay. So maybe I could replace that aluminum base plate with a steel one. Because I'm definitely getting more flex in there than I would like. As you can see, I didn't even get the part square to the cutter, because I'm kind of cutting a taper. I did not take the time to dial this in, just being a scrap piece of aluminum. If this was an actual part, obviously it would take quite a bit of time with an indicator getting the thing square and straight. But obviously that is not. Now that surface finish is horrible. Maybe I just tried too deep of a cut on that one. I'll go just a little bit deeper. And I'm seeing a big scratch in that surface. That's probably the end mill. I bet the first pass I was deeper into the flutes of the end mill. Now I'm right at the tip of the end mill. And I bet you my end mill is just dull. Is probably what's happening there. But I mean, well, that's not too bad. Well, yes it is. That was horrible. So, I mean, it does work. I can mill parts now. Again, not I've got to go easy. I've got to take small steps. That first pass was really decent. I think my main problems are I need a new end mill. I just need to take smaller bites. But yeah, I definitely could have used this for those other parts that I made. This would have really come in handy for making this part right here. But come on, that looks pretty good for just a file and a hacksaw. So I'm not going to remake it. That would just be silly. But if I would have had this, I could have used it. I'll definitely be using this for other parts. I'll definitely be making some improvements to this. I will definitely be investing in some better end mills, some newer end mills. Kind of hard to do a test like this with an unknown quality. I mean, just filling it does not feel sharp at all. So yeah, that's probably my biggest problem right there. So anyways, I don't know if this was interesting or helpful to any of you. Hopefully it was. Apparently it was enough that you haven't clicked off yet because you're still watching. So anyways, I'm going to end it here because this has been going on for way too long. But until next time, as always, thanks for watching.